Well, hello there, Joey here at School of Motion, and welcome to day 20 of 30 days of After Effects. Today's video is part one of a two-part series where we're actually gonna do something that's not very motion graphics-y. It's more compositing. Now, when I say compositing, what I'm really talking about is visual effects, which is something After Effects is used for all the time. Now, the next two videos are gonna cover a lot of important techniques that every MoGraph artist should know, because you never really know when you're gonna need to pull them out of your bag of tricks. We're gonna cover tracking, removing things from the background, keying, color correction, a whole bunch of stuff. I wanna give a quick thank you to the Baltimore Orioles who do spring training right here in Sarasota for letting me use the clip of their mascot in this tutorial. And this was actually shot in the green screen studio at the Ringling College of Art and Design, which happens to be an awesome college that I used to teach at. Don't forget to sign up for a free student account so you can grab the project files from this lesson, as well as assets from any other lesson on the site. All right, let's hop into After Effects and get started. So here's the final clip that we'll be producing, and like I said before, it's gonna take two videos to do this, and I'm gonna show you guys a lot of tricks, and a lot of hopefully pretty cool techniques to do compositing with. Let me start by showing you the two raw clips that we're gonna be working with. So here's the first clip. Now this clip was shot in the green screen studio at Ringling. This was actually for a class project that happened during the 2013-2014 school year. And the Baltimore Orioles have their spring training in Sarasota. So a lot of times what'll happen is Ringling will bring in companies and organizations that have roots here and create class projects out of that. So this was one of those, and it was pretty cool. Some players came down, the mascot came down. This was shot on Ringling's red camera, one of the red cameras, and shot in the green screen studio. So one thing I made sure to note before I went and shot the background was I made sure to figure out where the main light was coming from. The key light, that's the term. So I could match that when I shot a background. So if you notice, here's the key light. So I made sure that when I shot this footage, I made sure the sun was over here, at least on this side of the screen, so that shadows would fall on that side and the brightest part of the bird would make sense. So that's really important. Now this is the raw shot. All right, and it's actually much longer than the clip I showed you guys. I used just sort of this last little piece right here. Looking at the grass, looking up, and there's the bird, there he is. Now, you'll notice my 4-year-old's little Adirondack chair is there. This bright pink chair. Now, why did I do that? Well, I knew I wanted to track the bird to the ground. And it would be pretty tricky to do that if I didn't have some reference, something that I could track on the ground. Now, I'm going to show you some different sort of tracking techniques with these videos. The grass is actually trackable, but really, it's gonna be mainly trackable as like a large area, and we are gonna do that. But if I want to actually position something right on the ground, I knew I wanted a reference object. So I thought this would be a good reference object because you cannot have any more contrast than between green grass and a pink Adirondack chair. All right, so this is what we started with in beautiful sunny Florida, just sort of outside my house. So here we go. Let's start by taking this clip and making a new comp. So I'm just gonna drag it down here, make a new comp with it. And the first thing I wanna do is just trim this so I only have the piece of the shot that we're gonna use, because I shot for like a minute and I wasn't sure what piece of that I wanted to use. So I ended up starting about here. So I'm gonna hit B, set my endpoint there. And then I'm gonna go forward and we'll just go maybe, somewhere in there. I mean, I guess we could just use the rest of the shot. So now let me trim this comp. Let me control click or right click up here, say trim comp to work area. So now that's the only little piece of the shot that we're gonna use, okay? And what I need to do first, I need to get rid of the chair. And there's a bunch of different ways to do this, but I'm gonna show you the easiest way I can think of, and we're actually gonna do the whole thing just using tools that come with After Effects. I don't wanna use any third-party stuff for this tutorial. You can, but but why? You know, this is 30 days of After Effects. So what we need to do to remove this chair is first get a good track for the scene. There's a lot of new tools now for After Effects that let you do a fancy trick called camera projection. And camera projection is extremely useful for removing objects from scenes. The problem is it requires a very good camera track. And to be honest, After Effects' camera tracker is just not that great. I mean, it works in some cases, and it might even work in this case. But I don't like to use it. I like to use a different camera tracker that doesn't come with After Effects, so I don't want to do that. So what we're going to use is a program called Mocha. And Mocha comes with kind of a light version, and it ships with After Effects. So here's how it works. Select your clip, go up to Animation, say Track in Mocha AE. What's going to happen is it's going to open up Mocha, and it's going to start a new project. And so let's just name this project, I don't know, like backyard or something. And what it does by default is it saves a Mocha project file in whatever location you have here. And by default, it's going to save it in the same location as your After Effects project. One thing I always like to make sure I have checked is in this Advanced tab, make sure Cache Clip is enabled. And when you do that, when you hit OK, the first thing that happens is Mocha loads the clip into memory. You can see that's what it's doing. And this makes the whole process go so much faster. It takes, a minute on the front end, but now I can play this clip with the spacebar. I can play it in real time and it will track much, much faster too. So we're actually going to do 2 tracks for this, okay? So the first track we're going to do is we're going to track the grass, and I'll explain why. Mocha is a planar tracker, and what that means is it tracks, instead of individual points, it tracks planes. So if you think of a plane as sort of an area, a flat area that is kind of all on the same 3D plane, that's what Mocha can track. So what I want to do is try and track a big patch of grass, and I want to try and pick an area of grass that is relatively flat, specifically that's on the same plane as the area this chair is in. So I don't know if you guys can tell from the footage, but this part of the lawn right here, it goes up a little bit. There's a little bit of a hill there. So I don't want to track that part. But for the most part, the rest of this is pretty flat. So here's what I'm going to do. You can see that Mocha actually sees the entire clip, but there's an in and an out point that match up perfectly to my in and out in After Effects. So I'm going to go to the last frame here, and if you've never used Mocha, I'll talk you through some of the hotkeys and I'll show you where the buttons are. It looks really complicated. There's actually not that many things you have to deal with though, so it's pretty nice. So I'm going to click this button here right in the middle. These are your main play controls. And if you click this guy with the little line on the right side, it takes you to the last frame. So now on that last frame, I'm going to go up here to my tools and I'm looking at these pen tools, the X and the B. They both pretty much do the same thing. They let you draw a shape. The X draws sort of a normal spline that you're used to, right? You click and then you can sort of, actually, sorry, I'm saying it wrong. X draws an X spline, which is kind of a neat spline that Mocha lets you do, where you draw a spline and then use these handles to dictate how curvy that part of the spline is, or how not curvy. So that's kind of neat. And then you can also hit this B and draw a Bezier curve, and this is probably more like what you're used to, right? So I'm gonna delete this, and every time you make a shape, it adds a layer over here, and then you can select that layer, hit the trash can to delete it. So let's just use this little X spline because it's a little faster to draw. And what I want to do is draw a shape, and I don't want to include the chair. And the reason is the chair is sticking straight up and down. It's perpendicular to the grass, and I don't want to track that plane. I want to track the grass's plane, the ground plane. So I'm just going to sort of draw a rough shape, something like this. And it may seem weird, but Mocha is smart enough to figure out, by drawing this shape, I'm telling it that everything inside this shape is on the same plane. And now I want you to track that plane. So now I'm going to hit the track button, and I'm going to track backwards because I'm on the last frame. So here's your tracking buttons. The leftmost one will start tracking backwards. This one tracks one frame backwards. So I'm just going to click this one. and let it start going, okay? And you can see that it's absolutely amazing how well Mocha can track stuff, all right? Let me pause it for a minute. I mean, just look at this image here. There's like, as your human eye is gonna have trouble picking out one spot on this grass, but Mocha is able to track pretty seamlessly. And another cool thing you can do with Mocha is in the middle of a track, you can expand out this mask a little bit and just give it now more information to track, and it will keep tracking, and it doesn't mess up what's already been tracked. It's just now giving it more information to look for. And in general, the more information it's tracking, the more accurate the track is going to be. Now, as we get to the beginning of this shot, the camera is going to start to tilt down. And so as it tilts down, I want to make sure I expand this so now it can track all this new ground that's being revealed. And so I'll keep tracking backwards, and you can see it slows down, and I'm going to hit spacebar to pause it, and I'm just going to adjust this shape. Now, you can see this transform box around here. I can't see the top of it, so I want to move this whole thing down. And in After Effects, you hold spacebar, and that lets you sort of move your entire workspace. In Mocha, it's X. You hold the X key, and now you can move it. And the Z key lets you zoom in and out. So I'll hold X, and now I can shrink this shape down. Now, keep in mind, I'm not screwing anything up. I'm just telling Mocha now track this part, but it's still all on the same plane. So I'll keep tracking. And Mocha's so good, it can even track when stuff goes off screen. It can figure out where stuff should be. And let me just adjust this now. And then we'll keep tracking. All right, and we get to that endpoint, and now it will stop. And if I scrub through, you can see that right now it's kind of hard to tell what Mocha's done because the shape is, it's been keyframed. It's automatically, set keyframes when I change the shape, but it's tracked it very well. Now, here's what you actually do with that track. You need to set up a surface in Mocha. So the surface is actually the plane that it's going to apply this motion to. There's a button up here. It has an S in the middle of this little square, and if I click that, make sure this layer is selected, by the way. And you can actually double click this and rename it. Let's rename this grass. And now you see how this blue kind of rectangle appears, and you can drag the corner of those. And in this case, there's no real feature to track, right? I mean, like if I had placed a big poster on the ground or something, I could line the corners of this up to the poster to check and see how well my track is working. I didn't do that, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball this, and it's not too important. I just want to show you guys how well this worked. So that is now the surface, right? And if I scrub through, you can see that surface tracks pretty well to that grass. The perspective shifts. And if you really want to track it, what you can do is make sure you have your layer selected, come down here to Insert Clip, and set this to Logo. And it'll insert the Mocha logo, and now I can even hit spacebar, and it will show me, and it's playing almost in real time, and it looks like that logo is just perfectly stuck to the ground. Cool, so that's fantastic. So now let me show you generally how you use this feature, but it's not actually how we're going to use it in this case, but I just want you to understand Mocha a little bit more if you've never used it. Now that I've got a good track, I can go down here. Down here, you've got these three tabs: Clip, Track, and Adjust Track. In either Track or Adjust Track, you've got a button that says Export Tracking Data. So whatever layer you've got selected here, and right now we only have one layer, select that, hit Export Tracking Data, and what you can do is you can tell it what kind of tracking data you want. And what I want is the After Effects corner pin data, and you want this first one up here. And now you just hit Copy to Clipboard. And now go back to After Effects, go to the beginning here, and I'm just going to make a new solid. And I'm just going to hit Paste. And make sure you're on the first frame when you do this, but hit Paste. And now hit Spacebar. And it perfectly corner pins that solid now to the ground. And you can see that covers up my chair.
So what I need to do now is create a patch that I can patch the grass up, and basically just patch up this area and basically use a clone stamp tool to clone over the chair and just recreate the grass. Now here's where your problem comes in. When you corner pin something, it distorts the image. And so if I turn the corner pin off, this is actually my quote image, right? And when you corner pin it, it then sticks to your background plate. But if I was going to create a patch of grass that would then get corner pinned and would look correct, that would be kind of tricky. Because if I clone stamp something from this frame, right, and then it gets corner pinned, it's going to be distorted. It's going to be really hard. And so this is why the technique of camera tracking has kind of become popular in After Effects. If you Google After Effects camera projections, I should say, camera projections, there's a bunch of tutorials coming out now that show you how to do it. And it's a lot more complicated than what I'm going to show you. This is actually a really neat trick with Mocha. So we can't just corner pin something and just have it sit over that area. That won't work. Here's what we're going to do. Let me delete this for a minute. Let's go back to Mocha. And I have it open twice for some reason. So let's go back to this Mocha. Here we go. And let me turn off my insert clip for a minute and just set that to none. And I'm going to go to the last frame. This is a very important step. What I want to do is I want to pick a frame. And in this case, it's not really important because the camera doesn't move too much, but you want to pick a frame that gives you enough visual information that you could clone stamp pieces of it and cover up whatever object you're trying to get rid of. The last frame is going to work very well for this. And it's also important that you remember what frame you do this next step on. So by choosing the last frame, it makes it easier. On the last frame, I'm going to go to this button here. Okay, so with this layer selected, this little guy here, and if I hold my mouse over it, it says push the surface to the corners of the image. Keep in mind, this blue kind of trapezoid shape, that's the surface. So if I click this, look what it does. It moves the corners of that to the corners of my image. And now if I scrub backwards, you can see it's doing this bizarre looking distortion, which lines up only on the last frame. Now, what use is that? Well, this is a very cool trick. You guys are going to like this. So now with that step done, I'm going to say export tracking data, and I want the corner pin. I'm going to copy to clipboard, go back to After Effects. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to duplicate my footage layer. And on the duplicate copy, I want to pre-comp this. Make sure I move all the attributes into a new composition, and I'm going to call this patch. Then I'm going to go to the first frame, and I'm going to hit paste. Let me turn the sound off. Okay, so if I go to the last frame, and let me turn off this bottom layer for a minute. If I go to the last frame, my patch layer is lined up perfectly. And then as I scrub backwards, you can see it being corner pinned in this weird way. What's interesting is what it's doing, and this will make a lot of sense in like 5 minutes, but what it's doing is if you just stare at the grass, this grass has perspective on it already because, you know, it was shot with a camera, and cameras introduce perspective into an image. And so what it's doing is it's maintaining that perspective throughout my shot by warping the image so that on this frame, the corners line up, so if you look at the grass and just focus on the grass, you can see that it actually is sort of maintaining the correct perspective. So here's now what we're going to do is patch this. So let's go into our patch pre-comp. And I want to make it so that this footage doesn't play. I just want this frame. So I'm going to make sure I'm on that frame, select my layer, and go up to Layer, Time, Freeze Frame. And that's just a little shortcut. It turns time remap on, puts a hold keyframe on that frame. So now this whole layer is just that one frame. And I'm going to go to the first frame, and I want to use the clone stamp to paint out this chair. So you can't use the clone stamp in your composition viewer. You have to use it in a layer viewer. So you need to actually double click your layer here. and it will bring up this viewer. And this is what a layer viewer looks like. And so now I can use my clone stamp tool. Make sure that in your paint settings, the duration is set to constant so that whatever you draw, it's gonna maintain that clone stamp for the entire length of this layer, because there's different settings. There's write on, single frame. You don't want any of those, you just want constant. And then with your clone stamp tool, it works the same way it does in Photoshop. You hold Option and you select your source point. And let me zoom in here so we can really get a good look at this. Make sure we're at full res. The hotkey to go to full res, by the way, is Command-J, if you didn't know that. And then I'm using the period and the comma to just zoom in and out. So I'm going to hold Option, and I'm going to click somewhere over here. And the clone stamp right now, it's really, really big. I don't want it to be that big. If you hold Command and click and drag, you can interactively scale your brush size. So let's just pick a little spot. And the way I like to clone stamp is to kind of pick different areas of the grass and clone stamp different parts of that chair away. The reason I'm doing that is because if I just picked like this area here and did this, it works okay, but your eye might notice patterns if you're not careful. So it's always a good idea to kind of mix it up a little bit, all right? And just kind of make sure there's nothing that's obvious, right, that gives away that you've clone stamped it. So I did a few clone stamps and the chair is gone. This is a pretty easy example, but this works for anything. So now you can see that because I had this on constant, that maintains all the way through. Now I can close this layer viewer. And if we jump back into this now, right, you can see that now on the last frame, we've got our scene, and it sort of warps it in perspective, and it still looks really weird. So the next step, this is the key. Come in here, and we want to mask out just the part of the image that we want to fix. We don't want this whole thing. We only want the little patch of grass where there was a chair. So let me turn off the paint effect for a minute. Now here's something that's weird, and I don't know why this happens, but first I tried just putting a mask around this part and then turning the paint effect back on, and for some reason that screws up your paint effect. Having a mask on there screws it up. So we're going to delete the mask. We're not going to do it that way. What we're going to do is make a new layer. We're going to call it matte. I'm going to make it an adjustment layer just so I can see through it. And then I'm going to put the mask on that layer. Okay? And I'm going to feather that a little bit. And then I'm going to tell this layer to use this as its alpha matte. And now we can turn the paint effect back on. And now we've just got this little patch. And if we jump back here and you look at the little patch, you can see that it moves around and it's getting this perspective on it. And here's the magic. You turn the clean plate back on and oh my gosh, it sticks right to it. Okay, and let's just let that RAM preview. I don't know. The first time I did this, it blew my mind. I think it's pretty amazing. And you saw how easy that was. I mean, this works for any surface that is flat that you can get a good track on in Mocha. And now what we want to do is just focus on the last 10% to really help sell this composite, right? So let's zoom in. When you're compositing, and when I say compositing, I mean, I generally use that term to mean visual effectsy type of stuff like this, where this is not designing and animating. This is using After Effects to do a visual effect, basically. It's way more important in those cases that every once in a while you hop into 100% zoom and you go to full res so you can really see what it's going to look like. And here's one of the pitfalls of using this, right? This grass, even though it's, I just cut it the other day, it's pretty short, but there is some perspective to it, right? And so when we're over here, you get a little bit of a smearing effect and it just looks a little bit less sharp than the rest of the grass that's around it. So what can actually help sometimes is to sharpen the grass. So I sometimes just grab a normal sharpen effect and just knock it up a little bit, right? Let's see, knock it up to 5. And now, at least as a still, it seems to blend in better. If I turn it off and on, Man, I mean, it is just a subtle little difference. Let me see if I zoom in if you guys can see it better. It just sort of helps right in here. It helps the darks get a little darker, and it just sort of helps it sit in there a little bit better. Another thing that it's hard to notice. Let me maximize my frame here with my tilde key for a minute and try to show you guys as high quality as I can. Now, you're not really going to notice this very much, but this footage has grain in it. All footage has grain in it. Doesn't matter how high end of a camera you use, there's gonna be some sort of noise, just the way cameras work. However, because I made a freeze frame of that last frame, here we go. So now it's playing in real time. Because I actually froze that last frame to make that little clean plate, that little patch, there is no grain on that piece of footage. The rest of this has grain, that piece doesn't. And it's so subtle, but it's one of those things your eye just can kind of give it away. Now, maybe most people wouldn't catch it, but I guarantee a visual effects supervisor or a compositor would probably catch it. So what you want to try and do is match that grain to the existing grain in the footage, right? So it's hard to do when you're looking at the full image. It's a lot easier to do when you look at each channel individually. And by channel, this is what I mean. This button right here, I bet a lot of you have never clicked it. This can actually show you the individual channels that make up your image. By default, you're seeing the RGB composite image, but each image you look at actually has a red component and a blue component and a green component. Okay? And especially the blue component of video generally has the most noise. And so if you just look in here, right, you can kind of see a little bit of a noise pattern, and it's hard when the camera's moving so much, but you can see it. And you can probably especially see it in very bright areas. Like if you look at the water, you can see there's noise, right? But in our little patch here, there is absolutely no noise. And now you can almost see it because we're looking at the blue channel. So I need to add noise in there to really make it work. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put noise on it, but I'm actually going to put the noise on it inside of this pre-comp. And let me tell you why. If I just want to put noise on this patch, right? I don't want to put it on over the whole thing. I just want to put it on this layer. I'm going to go to Effect, Noise and Grain, Add Grain. Now, the way the grain effect works is by default, let me unsolo this. It gives you this little white box that you can move around, and it's only going to put grain inside that box. The reason it does that is because this effect takes forever to render. It is a render pig. And so the idea is you're supposed to use this preview box to get the grain set up, and then when you're done, you say Final Output, and then it puts grain over everything. Now, this layer is only this big. It's very little. But you can see instantly, if I turn this off and I hit spacebar, that's how fast it previews. If I turn it on, that's how fast it previews. Even though there's just this little piece of image, the effect is not smart enough to only work in that image. And I could try, there's different strategies, and the problem is that this layer is moving around on screen. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to put the Add Grain effect inside this pre-comp, and I'm just going to put it on an adjustment layer. All right, so make this an adjustment layer. I'm going to copy the Add Grain effect to that layer, and I'm going to set it to preview mode. And what's great, excuse me, about preview mode is that it renders much faster because it's only putting grain in this little box. There's a preview region setting on the Add Grain effect, and it'll actually let you increase the size of the preview region, right? So now it's rendering much, much faster because it's only putting grain inside that box, which is awesome. The problem is it's still rendering that little box. Well, you can turn that off too. There's a little checkbox, Show Box. If you uncheck that, now that box is gone and it's putting grain on that footage in this comp. Now, technically, it's also then warping the grain, which you don't really want it to do, but you're not going to be able to notice once the footage is playing and all that kind of stuff. So this is technically not exactly correct, but it's probably good enough. now what I want to do is I want to check. I want to zoom in here. Let me make an in and an out with my B and N keys. And I want to check looking at the blue channel. By the way, I don't think I mentioned this. The way I'm switching between the channels with the keyboard is you hold Option, and Option 1 switches to the red channel, 2 is the green channel, 3 is the blue channel. Whatever channel you're on, if you hit Option and that number again, it'll go back to your RGB. So you can quickly shift through your channels. So I'm looking at the blue channel now, and I know my patch is right there. So I need to look right there, and I'm seeing some grain in there now. And I think I got lucky and the default settings worked okay. Now, it's also a good idea to look at your other channels, your red and your green, and just make sure that you're still seeing the grain in those channels. Now, the add grain effects in After Effects doesn't give you a ton of options. Really, it gives you mostly options for just how intense the effect is going to be, how big the grain is going to be. And one thing that can be helpful is if you're trying to match film stock or something, sometimes there's way more grain in the blue channel than there is red and green channels. So you can twirl down in this little tweaking property thing here in this group, and then look at channel intensities. And so if I look at this, right, I'm looking at the green channel right now, and I'm thinking the green channel maybe doesn't have as much noise, it needs more noise in the green channel. So I'll come to here, and it's a lot of times a pain to bounce back and forth like that. I want to adjust this, but see the result here. So what I can do is just hit this little lock up here, and so now when I switch, it's gonna lock my viewer to the comp I want to see. And so now I can just increase the green intensity, maybe 1.2. Let's just try that. And then pop back in here and do a quick RAM preview. And then we'll see if I like that grain setting better. Okay. And overall, I think the grain matches a lot better now. So I'm going to go back to my RGB. Let me actually go to 100%. Take a look here. Do a quick RAM preview of just that section and see what we got. And I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. We now have grain on that little patch of grass. And it's such a subtle thing, and you guys probably can't really tell the difference looking at this on a tutorial, which is already heavily compressed to be on Vimeo. But when you're looking at this on a TV screen, or if this was for a movie or something, you can tell. Your eye will just know something's off, and you might not be able to put your finger on it, but you'll sense that something's wrong. So here we are. Now we have our clean plate. We are all ready to insert our bird into it. And before we do that, we actually need to get a good track to use for the bird. We can't use, let's go back to Mocha for a minute. We can't use this same track to put the bird in, because what we tracked was the grass. The grass is lying flat. But the player is going to be the bird is going to be standing straight up and down. So that's why I put the chair in there. So I had something in the scene that was standing up and down that I could track. And more importantly, I put it in the position where I wanted the player to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this layer off. I'm going to hit this eyeball icon next to grass. And so now I don't see that layer. And now I can make a new layer. Make sure you don't have this selected. And let's grab our B tool here. And what I'm going to do is zoom in. I'm going to hold Z and zoom in. And I'm going to draw a shape just where this chair is, okay? Just like this. And now I'm going to come down here to my track settings. And by default, Mocha tries to track a whole bunch of things. Translation, scale, rotation, and shear, and it can also track perspective. And if you want to know really what all these things do, you just check out the documentation for Mocha. But I don't want shear at this point. All I want to do is get a position, scale, and rotation value for what this chair is doing in the frame, and that way I can apply that to my mascot. So, I kind of did this wrong. I'm kind of in the middle of my clip here, so that's okay. I'll just track. First, I'll track forward. So I'm going to click the track forward button and let it track that chair. And it's going to very easily track that chair. And then I'll go back to where I started, and I will track backwards now. Oops, I did that wrong. I clicked the wrong button. Track backwards. There we go. All right. And because it's not tracking a very big area and because the clip is cached, it can track it pretty quickly. And you could probably get an okay track on this in After Effects. But Mocha is just amazing at tracking stuff that has kind of a pattern to it. And you can see that there's these little grooves in the chair, in the Adirondack chair, that makes it really, really easy for Mocha to track. If you haven't used Mocha before, you might also guess that it's amazing for doing rotoscoping. If I wanted a good mask that traced the contour of this chair, this program can do it amazingly, and I can't believe that it just comes with After Effects. They don't charge any extra. Let me zoom out a little bit, because once we get back to the beginning of this shot, the chair is going to go out of frame, and I want to just make sure that we can get as much of a track on that as possible. And I'm hitting spacebar to pause the track, and now I'm just going to track one frame at a time. And it's still tracking, and it loses the track there, but that's okay. I'm not going to worry about it. So now we have a track for most of this shot. All right, and I'm going to rename this chair. With the chair layer selected, I'm now going to go down and say export tracking data. This time I don't want a corner pin, I just want transform data. Anchor point, position, scale, and rotation. So I'm going to copy that to my clipboard. Hop back into After Effects. Go to the first frame, and I want to apply that information to a null object. I'm going to rename this track. Whenever I track something and apply the tracking information, I always do it to a null, because that way I can just parent things to the null. So I'm going to hit paste. And Mocha does something weird at first, okay? And I want you to see what it's doing. The null's way up here, but the anchor point for the null is actually in here, and it's kind of hard to see it. It's this little guy right in there, and it's actually tracked pretty well to the ground. But this is weird, and it's going to be tricky to work with. So what you do, this is actually a really simple solve. Go to the first frame, hit U on your track, and you can see these are all the keyframes that came over from Mocha. Just delete anchor point, and then zero out the anchor point, right? And so now, if you look, our null is right on the ground, right where the chair was, and it sticks perfectly to it. And when we get to, if we kind of, let me zoom out here a little bit, we will get to the beginning of this shot where the track failed. Okay, and you can also see that at the beginning of that shot, we're getting a little bit of that chair showing up. So what we need to do is actually change the shape of our mask a little bit. So what I'm going to do, because this will be easier if I do this, I want to see the result of what I'm about to do, which is change the shape of this mask. So what I'm going to do is I have, let me close this for a minute and show you how to achieve this. I'm in this comp. While you're in this comp, go up here and click on this arrow and say New Comp Viewer. And After Effects will make a new composition viewer. This viewer has the lock turned on. So now I can switch to a different comp and see that comp in this window, but see the result in this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go forward using page down until I don't see that chair anymore. All right, and then in this comp, and you can switch between them just by clicking in the viewer. I'm going to go to this comp, and I'm going to put a mask keyframe here with Option M. Then I'm going to go backwards until I actually see that chair, and then I'm just going to adjust the mask until the chair goes away. There we go. And then I'm just going to go page down, page down, page down, and make sure that the chair doesn't pop back into existence, and it shouldn't. And so now we fix that. So now I can close this window. Excellent. All right, I didn't even notice that when it was playing. It was only frame by frame that I noticed it. Cool, and so now we've got that null object in the right spot, and when the track goes bad on that frame, you have a couple options. One is you can just make it so that whatever object is gonna be tracked in there, right, the mascot, I can just make it so he doesn't actually appear until this frame. So he doesn't exist on this frame. The other thing you can do is, let's zoom in here so we can see all these keyframes. I know that these keyframes and all the ones that come before are useless. So I'm just going to delete those. And so then what I could do is just manually set this last keyframe myself. And I can kind of see what all the other keyframes are doing. And I can just kind of mimic that motion manually. Cool, so now I get one more frame where I actually get a good track, just by cheating. All right, and now let's actually test this track out. Let's make a solid, and let's pick some color here that we like. I don't know, what's hot now? Pink. Pink is hot. Let's make a solid layer, and let's just scale it down, and maybe make it kind of tall and skinny like this. And just temporarily, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn off my patch so I can see exactly where that chair sits on the ground. And I'm gonna move my layer right there. Then I'm gonna parent it to my track null and turn my patch back on. And if we did this right, that should look like it is stuck pretty darn closely to the ground. Okay, now it doesn't work until this frame right there. So I don't want that solid to exist before that frame, so I'm gonna hit Option left bracket to trim it. There we go. And let's zoom out, let's do a RAM preview here and see what we got. All right, and that's working pretty well. That's sticking to the ground, it's rotating with the camera, it looks like it's in the right spot. Let's just double check, turning the patch off because it looks like it's slipping a little bit. I just want to make sure, yeah, see, I didn't have it in the right spot. There's the bottom of the chair, right there. Now I'll turn my patch back on. And now it should stick a lot better. You got to be very precise if you use this technique. Otherwise, you will get something that looks like it's slipping. It's not really sticking to the ground. And there we go. All right, and now we've got this object tracked in there, and it's rotating, and it looks like it's in the scene. And we've cleaned up the scene. We've got a nice clean plate, and we've got a nice track, and we're ready to go. All we need to do now is key out our footage, put it in there, and do some other compositing to make it sit in that scene better. And this is where we are going to stop with part 1 of this video. In part 2, we will key out the footage, we will color correct it, we will do some other compositing tricks to make it feel like it really sits in this scene. But hopefully, you've gotten a little more comfortable with Mocha, and specifically with using Mocha a couple of different ways. We used it one way to actually track this thing into the shot. We used it a totally different way to make a clean plate for ourselves and get rid of that chair that was sitting there. So thank you guys so much. I hope you learned a lot, and I will see you next time.
Thank you so much for watching. We're gonna finish this video in part 2, and that's when we're gonna get into how to actually key the footage, integrate it into the shot, and how to color correct it so it looks right. We're gonna learn a lot more, so definitely check that out. Let me say thanks to Ringling one more time for letting me use their studio to shoot the mascot footage, and thanks to the Orioles for letting us use their mascot. I tried to treat it with respect even though I like the Red Sox. If you have any questions or thoughts about this lesson, let us know. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.